The U.S. House of Representatives voted overwhelmingly to fund Israel's Iron Dome anti-missile system. The vote came after progressive Democrats blocked funding during an earlier vote to extend the debt limit and keep the government funded. Many see their action to defund one of Israel's main front lines of defense as a foreboding sign of things to come. After the bill passed, Israeli Prime Minister Naftali Bennett thanked both Democrats and Republicans alike for what he called the overwhelming support for Israel and the commitment to its security. Democrats passed the first bill without the funding, and the later bill granting Israel $1 billion for the Israeli air defense system passed overwhelmingly, with 420 Democrats and Republicans voting in favor and just 9 against. The drama started earlier when progressive House Democrats, including Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez and Ilhan Omar, reportedly wanted to strip the $1 billion from the bill for the Iron Dome anti-missile system, or they wouldn't vote to fund the government. House Republican Minority Leader Kevin McCarthy tweeted, "Democrats just pulled funding from the Iron Dome, the missile defense system that has saved countless lives in Israel from Hamas rocket attacks. While Dems capitulate to the anti-Semitic influence of their radical members, Republicans will always stand with Israel." Earlier this year, Cortez, Omar, and other progressive Democrats in the House and Senate proposed defunding the Iron Dome while Israel was fighting a war with Hamas. During that war, the Iron Dome successfully shot down hundreds of missiles fired by Hamas into central and southern Israel. Hamas fired more than 4,000 missiles at Israel during the war into civilian areas. CBN News interviewed one of the developers of the Iron Dome during the war. He sees the Iron Dome as a true lifesaver on both sides of the fight. Many believe without Iron Dome, Israel would have been forced into a ground war with potentially massive casualties on both sides.
By the end of the day, we could look in the mirror and we could say we did something for the defense of Israel, we did something for our civilians, and we're saving life. And this is what the air defense is doing.
Former Israeli ambassador to the UN, Danny Denon, told CBN News the vote is a troubling sign of the direction of the Democratic Party.
I'm worried that those voices become louder. We know it's not the majority. Not in the Congress, not in the Democratic Party, but they are vocal. We expect our allies, and we have a lot of allies in the Congress, to speak against those voices. So I'm telling AOC and Rashida Tlaib and all those, they don't care about the Palestinians, they don't care about the Israelis, they care about getting headlines and getting support for their radical ideas.
Former Israeli ambassador to the U.S. Michael Lawrence said the vote on the first bill sets new and dangerous precedents in the U.S.-Israel relationship.
This is the first time that the U.S. Congress has specifically denied military aid to Israel. That's the first precedent. The second precedent is the first time that the U.S. Congress has specifically denied military aid to Israel for a defensive system.
Lawrence says Israeli leaders need to take notice.
And it's a warning for Israel. It's a harbinger of things to come. It is not the end of this process, the beginning of the process. And I think it should trigger some serious long-term strategic rethinking on the part of Israelis about the future of our aid with the United States. This decision should be a wake-up call for Israeli decision makers to begin that process of rethinking.
Alpha,